Are you guys already here? Okay, I'm just linking up right now with Steph. We're getting her online and then she's gonna be telling her stories long distance. Is that gonna work out? Alright, this will be last one. Alright, this room seems to have pretty good lighting. I think we'll get set up in here for tonight. We'll start around 6 p.m. Bring the candles in here, bring the laptop in here because we're going to go ahead and have Steph on Skype. And we'll get her story from the Keys where she's at. And we'll go ahead and just get all the cameras and everything set up in here and we'll get started. That sounds good. Alright, sound good? Guys, thanks so much for coming out tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. Candle number 100. A skull candle to top off our 99. Let 100 stories begin. The story I'm about to tell you takes place in Hokkaido. Now, as many of you probably already know, Hokkaido is the most northern section of Japan, the coldest and the one with the most snow. This takes place with one of my friend's house who went to college there during the deepest part of the winter. He would wake up every morning and find something very strange on his clothing. Hair, lots of it. Human hair, because when he investigated, he could see the strands were so long they could be nothing but that. He knew it wasn't his own hair as he had a short haircut at the time, and these were long strands, sometimes in clumps on his clothing. Extremely disturbed, he had no other choice but to go to the landlord and ask for the source of what would be causing long strands of hair to be stuck all over his clothing. The landlord sighed at that point and decided to tell him the history. You see, in Japan, when some sort of tragedy that connects death to an apartment has happened, by law the landlord must tell you. You need to decide if you want to stay living there. It was a freezing night, and a wife and a husband were in the middle of a heated argument. Now, they had argued many times before, but this is one of their most harshest arguments they had ever had, and it dealt with the father's drinking. An alcoholic, every night he would sit there with his bottle of sake and get so drunk that he could barely be coherent with anything that was happening in his house. They had a young daughter that he was neglecting the entire time. Yelling at him in a rage, she picked up a knife as he lunged at her with a bottle. Neither person was hit by either weapon, but the woman was pushed from the house and her daughter thrown out into the snow with her. The two were left to wander outside in the middle of the coldest night in Hokkaido. As they wandered around their country area looking for shelter, the night got colder and colder. Now, most could barely fare the winter even in a great winter coat. But a woman thrown out into the street by her husband in the middle of a cold night would suffer even more so. Unprepared, they walked, shivering the streets, looking for a place in which they could huddle down and find an abode in which to give them shelter for the night. The girl began to shiver uncontrollably and her lips were turning blue. The mother, realizing all she had was a knife, began to cut her long, beautiful hair. Something she had sold before for weeks. She began to stuff clumps of it in between her daughter's clothes, giving her as much insulation as she possibly could. Little by little they walked on, banging on doors and asking for help. It was a brutal night in the town, and the people were colder than the weather itself. They could find no shelter, and they were stuck looking for a place to go, to warm themselves, to comfort themselves. Meanwhile, the woman chopping locks of hair off as her daughter grew colder and colder. Still, nothing could stop her from freezing, and as a blizzard began to stir up, things only became worse. Both of them shook violently. With the last little bit of dying strength she had, the woman scalped her own head, hoping the flesh connected to the hair would keep her daughter warm. She wrapped her dying body around her child, hoping the last little bit of body heat she had would keep her alive. Next day, both were found. The daughter had frozen to death, covered in human hair, and her mother had carved herself down to the skull.
This is my tale of the Red Room. The story starts June 1st, 2004. A primary school girl comes home from school, turns on her computer, and joins the chat room to talk about her first world trivial problems with her other grade school friends. Meanwhile, her parents are downstairs, minding their own business. As she is in her room, talking away with her friends, like any time back then, a pop-up would appear, asking, "Do you like?" With quickness, she would close the pop-up. A few moments later, the same pop-up would appear, saying, "Do you like?" Again, she turned it off, frustrated, irritated, and again it would pop up, and again it would pop up, saying, "Do you like? Do you like? Do you like?" Finally, after many tries, she just let this pop-up finish what it had to say. And finally it popped up again. A red door saying, "Do you like the color red?" And then she finally clicked it. Clicked accepting the pop-up. And what would happen that June 1st is that her blood would be splattered and smeared across the walls, and her body would be found dead in her room. Funny enough, this girl that died was connected to the sasebo slashings, where she killed other primary grade school kids. So even now, Japanese people are very skeptical about pop-ups. And people say, if you ever see this red door pop up, just turn off your computer and you won't have your walls splattered red.
Yeah, we're ready. Go ahead.
The story I'm going to share as my ghost story
is about a doll. A rather terrifying doll named Robert. For those from Florida, where I'm from, they might be familiar with the tale of this little toy. Our story begins in Key West, a very old and mysterious city. And this took place maybe over a century ago. And there lived a nice little family. Mother, father, and their son, Robert Eugene. But they also had a maid from the Caribbean, who, rumor has it, used to practice voodoo. Not just any voodoo. Very dark, black magic. So, one day, this maid decided to give little Robert Eugene a toy, a doll she made for him. Apparently, she used the little boy's very own hair on the doll. Oh, and Robert Eugene was so happy. I mean, this little doll was also named Robert, just like him. But the parents were none too pleased that their maid was practicing black magic. So they fired her. But Robert Eugene still had his toy. And he was so happy with it, he wouldn't let it out of his sight. Everywhere Robert Eugene went, Robert the doll went with him. He refused to be without him. But the family started to notice that Robert Eugene was acting stranger and stranger. For one, he refused to be called Robert anymore, claiming the doll now was Robert, and he just wanted to be Eugene. So, as time went on, the parents noticed something else. Strange things were constantly happening throughout the house. Things would be broken, they'd hear strange screaming, and they would ask their son, "What's going on?" And he would say, "Robert is doing it. It's Robert." So time went on. Eugene now grew up into an artist, a rather renowned artist from the area. And he now lived in an artist's house with his wife. But his wife was none too pleased with this doll. Some claimed that when they see the doll, they say it's the face of pure evil. But Eugene wasn't having it. He wanted Robert to be with him. His wife, however, had other plans, so she decided to stick Robert in the attic. And now more things started to break. Things started to just fall apart, and Eugene was panicking and angry. And when his wife would ask why, she'd said, "Robert is mad. He's angry with us. He wants a better view. He doesn't like it in the attic." Now, Eugene apparently passed on in the very room Robert was in, wanting to die, I guess, next to his most precious belonging. But his wife, who now took control of the house, shoved Robert back into the attic and moved away. Soon after that, another family moved in. One family with a small little girl. And when they found, this toy in the attic, they thought maybe their daughter would like to have it. However, shortly after its arrival in her bedroom, this little girl would always wake up screaming, saying she was being attacked, that the doll was trying to kill her. I guess, rather than throwing it out, it seems to make more sense, this family gave the toy away, where it now sits in an old museum. Now, visitors to this museum, and apparently some of the caretakers, say that when you look at Robert's face, his expression will change, and he'll become angry at you. Others who stay at this house now, which has now become an inn, say they hear a child's laughter all the time in the attic, and little strange footsteps all throughout the house. Now, lots of people have tried to figure out what exactly is happening, but no one really knows. But apparently, the ghost of Robert still haunts that very attic where he was stuffed inside.
this is one I got in an email. I haven't read it yet, so we'll see how it goes. Name of the story is called Star. A star came down from the sky one night to speak with a young girl. I'll grant you a single wish, anything you want, and I'll make it come true. The girl was crying. Please, get rid of my family. I don't care how, just make them go away. The next day, the girl woke up to find everything was just how it always was. Her mother, her father, her brother, all perfectly fine. The girl began to worry. That night, the star returned to the girl. Is everything as you hoped? The star asks. I take my wish back, said the girl. Oh, but I can't. Once the wish is granted, I can't do anything about it, the star replied. The girl began to cry. So basically the breakdown of that is the family the girl was living with was not her biological family, and she wished away her real family. It was more sad than scary, I think, but guess it still counts. Let's Alright.
This next story is a blog post. It has a paranormal connection that I think you'll find a bit interesting when you listen to this story. It's called Endless Hide and Seek. I was in 6th grade when this happened. A guy in my class, Sugiyama, was involved. He was kind of out there and he always did things that seemed kind of strange. He'd sleep throughout class and only show up for school for lunch and then leave, and of course everyone in our class made fun of him for doing this. I know I did. Looking back on it now, I wonder if he didn't have some sort of mental disability, and I feel bad for what I did. Sugiyama and I were in the same class for 3rd and 4th grade, and we played hide and seek together. The rules were that once the recess bell rang, everybody was in their seats, the game was over. In other words, everybody would run to the classroom, and whoever was it was one who didn't manage to catch somebody before everyone else sat down in class. They were the loser then. We played rock, paper, scissors, and I lost, so I was first. Sugiyama was the only one who didn't run away immediately, so of course I tagged him. But even though he was it, he didn't run after anyone. He just kept walking around slowly. The bell rang and the rest of us ran to the classroom and sat at our desks. Everyone but him got into their seats. That was boring. He didn't even chase us. Why did he do that, I thought? Everyone who had been playing hide and seek was annoyed with Sugiyama, and we were all complaining when we walked into the classroom. We all looked at him, and it looked like he had been crying. He began to walk straight towards me. He looked like he wanted to hit me. And when he got in front of me, he tried to force me out of my seat. Luckily, the teacher walked in the door right then, and the beginnings of a fight ended right there. Everyone had seen what had happened, though. After that day, nobody would talk or play with Sugiyama. It didn't take long before someone created a game where you weren't supposed to go within 5 meters of Sugiyama. Everybody played along, and it continued as long as he was in class. I think that this might be where he started sleeping during school. In July, during 6th grade, our class was assigned different seats. I ended up in the same group as Sugiyama. This meant that we would be cleaning a conference room after school and, of course, playing the game again. The game everyone had played over and over again, but I still didn't want to be anywhere near him during this game. This meant that we would be cleaning the conference room after school, and it was small. Of course, the game everyone had played was over, but I still didn't want to be anywhere near him because I was still playing the game in my own mind. The conference room wasn't really watched over by any teachers, so students didn't really put a lot of effort into cleaning it. I like to try and balance the broom on the palm of my hand, and others would pretend their brooms were spears or batons. Sugiyama was along and cleaning, and he took it very seriously. He would honestly try to keep the room clean. The bell rang, letting us know that the cleaning time was over, and everyone threw their brooms into the storage box and made a run for it. I'd been trying to balance my broom on my hand, so I told myself that I'd put my broom away once I lost the game. Only once the broom dropped from my hand did I notice that Sugiyama was still in the room with me, and we were alone. I picked up the broom, thinking I could just put it away and leave, but he stepped in front of the box where I could put it away. He stood there, ready to fight. I probably should have left right there, but I didn't. I thought I'd get yelled at. so I wanted to put it away right and tried to get past him to put it in the box. "You're in the way," I told Sugiyama. "Move." "You never tagged me that day," he replied. He looked at me for a moment before turning around and running out of the room at full speed. I didn't know what was going on, but he still just ran away without saying another word. I went back to the classroom and found him at his desk, smiling widely and crazy. Was this a continuation of what had happened years ago? I wasn't sure, but the ritual continued every day after that. At first I was shocked that he kept it up and refused to play along, but he just got more and more annoying. I tried to ignore it, thinking that if I joined in, it would only drag it on even longer. But Sugiyama's actions began to escalate. When he went to the classroom, he would sit in his chair, dragging himself along by his feet. He would stare at me with the same proud look on his face, and I couldn't help but get pissed off. But one day I got an idea. If I tapped him on the last day of school and then ran away, he would be it until the first day of the next year. I knew it would piss him off. He didn't know where I lived, and of course none of my friends would tell him. He continued to run away from me, but now I found it funny because I kept imagining his expression when I finally tagged him. Finally, the last day of school came. We had a ceremony we had to attend, as in most Japanese schools. We had to change shoes when we got to school. My plan was to tag him when he was changing his shoes from indoor shoes to outdoor shoes. The closing ceremony and goodbyes ended, and I pretended to ignore Sugiyama. I hurried out of the classroom. He was kind of dumb, so he hadn't bothered to pack up any of his things the day before. He had tons of stuff, which would make it even harder for him to come after me. I, on the other hand, didn't have anything at all. I put on my outdoor shoes and hid, waiting for Sugiyama to come by. After about 30 minutes, I finally heard his bag dragging along the ground. I looked out from my hiding spot and waited for just the right moment. As soon as his indoor shoes were off, I went up behind him and hit him on the back and screamed, "Tag, you're it, ha!" in a hateful tone before running away before he could possibly tag me back. Sugiyama's response was much worse than I expected. He screamed loudly behind me. He just kept running and running. I laughed and turned around, looked to see how pissed off he was. I thought that he was probably still dragging his things with him, huffing and puffing behind, but I was wrong. What I saw was him running in his socks, his book bag thrown aside. I laughed even harder at him. "I'm gonna kill you," he cursed. He screamed at me. By that time, his last expression and voice sounded hoarse, like he was forcing it out too hard. When I finally made it home, I still couldn't stop laughing. I felt refreshed. Around dinner time, I was watching TV when I heard a howl that sounded almost inhuman. The first thing that came to my mind was Sugiyama had come to kill me. I broke out into a cold sweat. Was he still looking for me? If he found me, I'd be in trouble. Later that night, an emergency call came from my parents. The message was being relayed to all my classmates. Sugiyama had died. He was hit by a truck. I later learned that he had ignored a stoplight, ran into an intersection. His socks were apparently in tatters, and the autopsy showed that his throat was irritated. He was killed right around the time I had heard the voice during dinner. Maybe it's because he left school so late, but nobody ever found out that I had anything to do with his death. I wonder if he was calling out and searching for me right up until the moment that he died. I'd like to say that the voice wasn't the end of this story, but the voice was not the end of this story. The night of his death, I heard the voice again. I think he was chasing me. I started spending as much time as possible sitting in chairs. Maybe if I'd be sitting, I'd be safe. I'm pretty much living my life how Sugiyama was acting in class. I'll sleep in my chair, just like he used to do in class. I'm always worried that somebody will start chasing me, and I won't get close to anyone. It's kind of ironic that I'm stuck in my own version of hide and seek 10 years later. What do you guys think? expected. Nothing paranormal. No link to the spirit world bringing through demons and ghosts. Whoa. Just another night going out for pizza. Anyway, grab the keys. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the lights and we'll head out. Someone left a candle? There's a candle right here. It's still going. It's still burning. Are you guys serious? To leave one candle burning, isn't this kind of pointless if we leave one candle burning out of 100? Are we supposed to open the portal to the spirit world? Maybe you guys too scared to blow it out. Whatever. Jump scare! Jump scare!